But let's talk more about the biggest story today happening about now is the unveiling of a policy roadmap for the incoming Buhari administration with core areas of focus on the economy, job creation, and insecurity, among others. I'm hoping to be joined from Abuja via telephone by the Professor of Entrepreneurial Studies, Pat Utomi. But here in the studio with me is CEO RT Advisory Services, Okpeyemi Agbaje. Good morning and thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Interesting times ahead. Today is in fact, the biggest story is the unveiling of, the APC manifestos and the rest of it in Abuja. But let's get your thoughts. What are your feelings?
Well, the APC had in circulation some draft roadmap before, and yes, like you said earlier, it emphasized jobs, it emphasized anti-corruption, security, and all of that. But of course, we know that the fiscal situation has become clearer after the victory of the party in the elections is now for governance, and some of the aspirations need to be realigned in the face of the fiscal reality. So it's good that we're hearing from the party what they plan to do for over the next 4 years.
What are your expectations with regards, the insecurity challenges that we're facing, especially let's start from the north? That's been one very key area that I know a lot of people have actually looked forward to, partly because we've got a lot of businesses, affected by the insurgency that's gone on there for the past couple of years now, and of course local food production as well.
Well, I think everybody, myself included, expect progress on the insecurity front. Clearly, we need a different hand on the insecurity issue. The Buhari regime comes with some military background, with some credibility in the region, the northeast. It's clear that he was the most popular person. He won overwhelmingly across the northeast. So if anyone can make progress on Boko Haram and all of that, they should be able to do so. In any event, we need a fresh lens to look at the problem. So we expect some decisiveness. Like I said, credibility in the region is important. It's always been easier to deal with an insurgency if you have local intelligence and local credibility, and you're able to relate to the local population. So we would probably expect, but we need, of course, clear strategies. It's clear that in the last 3 months, the government itself, the current government, the outgoing government, has made progress on dealing with Boko Haram. But as we've seen in the last few days, it's too early to say that problem is over. So yes, this government will have to deal decisively with that problem.
Mr. Agbaje, hold on to your thoughts. We're being joined now on the phone from Abuja by Professor of Entrepreneurial Studies, Professor Pat Utomi. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. Of course, I know you're part of the big event today happening in Abuja, the unveiling of the APC's policy roadmap, as it were. But first of all, let's just quickly get your thoughts, get the mood actually at the venue.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get it clearly. At the venue? Yes, I am at the venue.
So what actually is going on right now? We're expecting a keynote.
Right now, there's a keynote address going on by Peter Mendelsohn. You remember Peter Mendelsohn was the third man in the troika of Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, that brought New Labour to power in Britain. He's representing Tony Blair today. So he's giving a keynote address right now.
So looking at the items lined up for today, one of such things I've already started having a conversation here with Mr. Okpeyemi Agbaje, talking about insecurity in the north and how it's affected the economy. Very, very strong issues here. A lot of people are going to be listening now to know what this direction is really going to be. Of course, we've already had a couple of feelers, but we've seen that the economy has been hurt and hit quite hard by the insurgency in the north.
Yeah, well, yes, of course, there has been a near total collapse of the economy of the northeast. And so you are going to have to apply a post-war economy strategy, the kind of economic strategy that you applied to Liberia immediately after the civil war there, or the kind of strategy that General Gowon applied in Nigeria after the civil war in 1970, which had 3 R's: reconciliation, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. So in many ways, that would generally be the thrust of policy.
You can take it up from there. We're talking
Actually,
about, he says we should be looking at a post-war strategy for the economy. And so what I also wanted to find out, in terms of looking at this post-war strategy, should state policing, that issue that has been on for quite some time, be revisited?
Actually, the draft APC roadmap said it would enable states to have their own local police forces that address the special needs of each community. So it was something they had actually committed to in the roadmap before the elections. It would be useful to hear the president-elect or the vice president-elect or any of the leading policy members, such as Pat Utomi, reaffirm that commitment. But yes, indeed, it was a commitment under their justice, peace, and security item. There were 10 points that they emphasized in that roadmap, and that was a promise that they made. So, and I absolutely agree. One of the things I said earlier is insecurity, insurgencies, crime are essentially local factors. And there's always one of the problems you could see evidently that the Jonathan regime suffered from in its ability or inability to deal with the issue of Boko Haram was its alienation from the local community. So, for instance, they sent a GOC who comes from Kaduna or Maiduguri or Jos to try and there's, until perhaps later, there was obviously a deficiency of local intelligence.
So
state police, community police, those sorts of structures allow the community to take part in law enforcement. And it's not just in respect to insurgency, even in respect to armed robbery, crime, petty crime. We saw the robbery that happened in Lekki just before the elections. And it turns out today that those people came from a community called Arepo. And there are people in that community, probably, who know what the activities of these gentlemen are. So until we domesticate security, law enforcement, policing, and all of that, we are likely to have suboptimal outcomes in security.
Well, Mr. Agbaje, we have Professor back online now. Professor, if you can hear me, let's go back to that question. Talking about state policing. Now, Mr. Agbaje has actually talked a little bit, about giving his own perspectives. It's part of the manifesto, of the APC's manifesto, state policing. How strongly will this be pursued?
Okay, yes. By the way, I apologize. What I was hearing was state tourism, but it was state policing. So I hear you clearly now.
It's fine, Professor.
There is no question that policing is more effective when there is ownership of the policing function by the community. Anywhere in the world, in England, the old woman who is sitting there at the window, looking out constantly, is the one who finds an awkward person moving around strangely in the neighborhood and supplies information to the police. So community policing is critical to effectiveness in policing. But the most important element in community policing is trust. And this is why community policing is good, because the policeman lives in the neighborhood. The people in the neighborhood know the policeman, know the person as a person of integrity who will keep to their word, and they will therefore supply information that will lead to the resolution of criminal activity. Unlike, unfortunately, the situation we tend to have now, you transport some stranger into some community, and the stranger is not rooted in that community, and because that stranger is not rooted, sometimes, unfortunately, as we have today, you even have collaboration between the police element in the community and criminal elements. So the idea of community policing will help overcome that. And in terms of ease of administration, the closer the structure of the police is, the more decentralized it is, the more effectively you can move around assets of the policing function. But people have resisted this historically in post-military Nigeria, or since the military era, for reasons like native authority police was used to abuse the rights of citizens in the 60s, in some parts of Nigeria. And I say to the people who make that argument, is federal policing not used against citizens sometimes by people who have power? What we must do is build a culture that is integrity-driven and systems that enable you to overcome certain kinds of challenges where that integrity is insufficient. For example, in America's federal structure, where many of us have watched in recent times the movie Selma, where local police was used to brutalize blacks and prevent them from registering to vote and all of that, you had a new federal law which now makes it easy, once it involves the human rights issues, for the FBI to be supported into that local police environment. But there's no question that community policing organized at state level might be a more effective way to fight crime and bring more security to the people of Nigeria.
Would that also be another effective way, do you think, to protect the pipelines? Because we've had several situations of oil and gas sabotage.
Absolutely. Part of the thinking that I am familiar with that is going on is literally to give ownership for the safety of the pipelines to the local communities and compensate them on the upside, that is, compensate them for nothing ever going wrong. Now, what the arrangement is today is that those who have, quote-unquote, the contract to protect these pipelines get compensated for just having this contract. And then people, if you watch, there's a pattern. Once power generation in Nigeria reaches 4,000 megawatts, there's always a blowout in one of the pipelines. Because those who profit from the system immediately see a need to take advantage of this newfound relief. And they will get the contract to clean up and to protect once they do that. So we have this vicious cycle of we make progress with power. We're nearly at 4,000 megawatts of generation. Bang, we're back to square one and we're down to 2,000 something megawatts. But if you got each community, their traditional ruler and youth, to come together and say, if anything goes wrong in this area, here's what you lose. If nothing happens, here's what you gain. And I think we'll have a better policing of the pipelines that way.
Well, thank you so much, Professor, for your thoughts. But just before I let you go back to the program, because I know we will be talking to you in the course of the day, talk a little bit more about anti-corruption. I know you talked about it a little bit in passing, but how do you think the new administration will enshrine anti-corruption processes?
Well, one of the most important things about how you fight corruption is the example of the leaders. When the people at the top are walking their talk, I'm not just saying things, they set a tone, a moral tone for the country, and that is very, very important. It's very helpful in the fight against corruption. Once you set that tone, you must also have systems in place that reduce discretion. I give you a simple example. If you have a law that says, if your goods arrive the port, if in 3 days customs haven't invoiced you, done this, done that, you are free to drive out of the port with those goods. And any good that drives out of the port without their duty, customs officials involved suffer a certain penalty, which includes even their jobs being on the line. We will see that reduction of discretion will lead to improvement in the system. Then, thirdly, and only thirdly, when there is an infraction, you set an example with those who break the law. We will see very quickly that order will begin to arrive. And after a while, that order becomes the settled habit of the community. And people will begin to say, oh, they used to be corrupt in the Nigerian customs in the past. But now, no, look at how wonderful. That's the story I told of the Hong Kong police, which is one of the most corrupt police forces in the world. But today, it's an exemplary police force.